Okay, let's do some SEO news instead then.
Yeah, let's do that. We have a ton of it, so let's go through it. We have a lot of Google news because Google decided to show us some fancy videos again. We have Microsoft news this week. We have WordPress news. We have a lot of everything. So yeah, let's start going through. And as always, we start with our big evil overlords, also known as our very good friends of Google, who have just put everyone on page 1.
Yep, congratulations everybody. We're done. We can go home. Good job.
Yeah, we now all have page 1 rankings. So I think that's our mission done. We now have SEO for everyone.
It's going to be interesting though, isn't it? So this is, I think, mobile only and possibly US only at the moment, and only the first 4 pages worth of content. So it's not quite infinite scroll, but it's definitely page 1 is now a big complicated thing. I think it'd be interesting to see, maybe this means that there are more clicks and views of stuff that would have been on page 2 because it's a bit easier to access. Maybe people scroll a bit further, they get used to, like in the same way you do with Facebook or Twitter, you just keep scrolling. Maybe this means that stuff that's a little bit deeper gets a bit more attention. It's early days, we shall see. But yeah, we're all on page 1, so job done. Good work.
We could actually research that, right? I mean, we know what ranks on number 11, 12, etc. We could just see if it gets more clicks from mobile.
Yeah, I think there'll be a whole bunch of research coming out. We'll do some of our own looking. It'll be interesting to see what the impact is for sure.
Yeah. Doesn't really change anything. It's just something, it's as with a lot of these Google updates, it's a fact of life, and we'll just have to live with it. Now, this is another fact of life. We all grow old, and as we grow older, Google brings back features that we used to have in the past and that now suddenly are shown as though they are new. So indented results, I was talking to Jono like, hey, didn't we used to have this? And then I gave Jono an article from, what was it?
I think 2007, maybe?
Yeah.
When this was first rolled out in its first version, and then it went away for a long time, and now there's a flavor of it back. But yeah, this isn't new.
No, it's not new at all. We had this for a while, then they took it away, and now they have realized that it is, well, in many ways a good thing. But the funny thing is, why it went away is also why I think it'll go away again. Because if you have these indented results, that second result might very well be actually ranking like number 10 in the search results. And it's indented right below your other result. So if you have 2 results on the result page, one is on number 1 and the other is on number 10, then now you have number 1 and 2. So getting that second result is actually something that was a bit easier now, but also could get you a lot of screen real estate.
Yeah, it surprises me because they've put a lot of work into trying to diversify the results. Like, they don't want 10 results from the same domain or the same brand. They want different types of things from different types of domains. So to now be back in a position where you might get 2, 3, 4, 5 links. Yeah, yes, even if I'm super relevant for the query, and even if I've got multiple pages that match, as a user, I still think I want to see some different choice. So I think this might get turned back down as well. We'll see.
I have no belief that this will stay on long, but if it does, it is a very good way of rather simply dominating the second bit of the results.
Yeah, we were saying it makes sense to double down on stuff where you're already quite strong, maybe rather than trying to broaden out and go wider. So there's some interesting strategy plays here.
Yeah. What I will say is that you can do most of this with just internal linking if you already have a lot of content, because you very often will already have something that ranks on like number 11, 12, 13 for a keyword that you already have a number 1 result for. Getting the number 2 should not usually be that hard. This was funny. We talked about this last time, that they were indexing TikTok or talking to TikTok, and now they are actually showing them in the search results.
Yeah, and Facebook videos and videos from other sources. So this is TikTok-esque short video content in the search results for things where it makes sense. And this is obviously mostly recipes, gossipy news, kind of short tips and tricks, how-to guides, etc. But this is a new format that's quite interesting. We haven't seen much crossover between the worlds of TikTok and Instagram and SEO and Google. They're now coming together more and more. I think this might be the first step of an evolution of the search results having more of this kind of content, especially when we look at Google focusing on things like web stories. They're really keen on grabbing a slice of that kind of Instagram stories pie. So expect more of this, and definitely don't dismiss TikTok just as a social media thing that the kids do, because if this is turning up in the search and search results, it's influencing how people think, how they buy, which brands they convert with. So yeah, this is a big deal.
It's already influencing a lot of our dinner conversations at home. So yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so Google is developing a big moments feature. I read this and I was going like, okay, so I thought this was what Twitter was for.
Yeah, and I think that's the same thing that they said. So there's not a lot of detail on what this is yet, other than the fact that they say Google tends to be the place that people go to for information after something has occurred, whereas Facebook and Twitter are where they go whilst it's occurring. And obviously that means Google are missing out on users and revenue and ad views, etc. So Google really want to be competing better in that space for breaking news, and it's not something that their ecosystem is designed to do very well. So they're working on this new product that I think will probably be built on the back of things like Google Discover, and maybe even some of that featuring things like TikTok videos, and them doing a better job of algorithmically curating breaking news. So from an SEO side, breaking news has never been something that we've ever thought about competing in, because it just hasn't made sense for an SEO perspective, but maybe now it will. So definitely worth watching.
Yeah, so I have done SEO for breaking news, but that was at a publisher,
Yes,
where it was a very, very aggressive game, played like literally by the likes of The Guardian, the New York Times, the Washington Post, etc., with 24 hours, 7 days a week SEO editorial teams.
Yeah.
But that's a completely different game, right? If they're going to open this up a bit more, then it might actually change journalism a bit in a way.
Yep.
This actually made me very happy. I can't wait for them to roll this out on iPhone, because I am a iPhone user, not an Android user. But they seem to have brought back an RSS reader into the world of 2021.
Yeah, so if you're not old enough to remember RSS, for a long time, it was the way we subscribed to, before email lists were a thing, before Twitter was a thing. If you wanted to get the latest news, you went to your favorite website and you followed that RSS feed. RSS feeds still exist, but since Google killed Google Reader and FeedBurner died, it's kind of gone the way of the dinosaur. But all the technology has still existed in the background. It's just not really been used much. And now, yeah, they're bringing it back. This sits on your home screen alongside things like Google Discover, and you get a big list of all the cards of the blog posts and pages that the sites you have chosen to follow have published. Yeah, this is really interesting. I think the idea that I can go, I want to see all the latest content from Yoast.com as soon as it's published, available on my phone, super handy. But yeah, iOS support and desktop support would really be the next stage for this.
Yeah, and I'm assuming that's coming, but we'll see. Titlegate continues with what they now call a title link, which is in many ways I can't get my head around.
Yeah, this is really messy. So we've spoken for the last maybe 2 webinars about Google rewriting everybody's titles and how nobody is really happy with it because it's not very good and we can't control it. It's all very frustrating. Google's response to that has essentially been, we'll keep doing it anyway and we'll try and get better at it. They're still not. And now they've, in their attempts to clarify it and describe what they're doing, I think they've made it more confusing. They've introduced a whole bunch more terminology. They're trying to justify how it all works and explain the differences. And it's focusing on the semantics rather than the problem. I'm really hoping that the SEO industry still keeps pressure on Google to say, actually, this is not good. It's not helpful. Please let us control how we represent our brands and our content in the search engines, or just do a better job of it. But in the moment, we're still stuck in a no man's land where Google says you have no control and then does a bad job of it. So hopefully this will all go away.
Yeah, I hate that they actually use a pipe in their own search results.
Yes.
It's so ugly. Anyway, so what you should be doing is optimizing all of this with Yoast SEO Premium, of course, because that's what we build it for. well, you can actually do it with Yoast SEO free as well. But if you want to send us some cash so that we can actually keep on building and doing this sort of stuff, then by all means buy Yoast SEO Premium, and you'll get a whole load of nice features along with it. With that, onto our daily program show of Search On. Google did this whole event yet again. They make a whole fuzz out of this, don't they?
Yeah, this is like the Apple annual keynotes, their big announcements of all the clever stuff they're doing with AI and machine learning. A lot of it is like, maybe soon we're working on something that we're going to release that might look like this. Some of it turns out to be a bit vaporware, but a lot of it ends up being core parts of their product. So it's worth going through, seeing what they're thinking about, seeing how it's evolving. And there's some really interesting themes in this one for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's start going through them. This one had me quite excited because I like Lens. And I like actually searching with my camera because I'm lazy like that.
Yeah, this is really great. They've been promising a flavor of this for years and it's never quite been there, but this looks like it might finally be the product that we've all wanted. Literally point your phone at the thing and get contextual search. So I don't have to search 4 times, rewrite my search, try and describe what I want and not quite right. I can go, tell me about this, give me more information about that, show me the opening hours of these, tell me where I can find more of that thing. Really, really useful. We'll see where it goes, but this feels like it might finally be smart enough to be useful.
It is getting close to that Star Trek computer they've always been talking about. This for videos is also very interesting. They actually know a bit more about the topics of a video in the search results. This could be very useful for many people, I think.
Yeah, there's 2 things to that. One is extracting the topics, but also just identifying the relevant snippet. So if there's a 20-minute video and the bit that says, here's how to fix the bike chain, for example, is at 3 minutes in, that's the only bit I need. But I might also want the related concepts of, and here is the wrench you need, and here is a local shop nearby. They're getting smarter and smarter at extracting that relevant content and then giving you the rest of the tools that you need. We've said a few times, if you're not already investing in video, you definitely need to be looking at it because this is how a big part of how many people solve their problems and make decisions and are influenced. It's going to get harder and harder to compete here. It's going to get harder and harder to sell here as Google are helping people on these kind of self-help journeys in context. So you need to be there and providing useful content.
Yep. And there we go. Even more things to know about our SERP features.
And this is the same kind of thing. I think this is really interesting because this is actively steering a user's search. So I think the thing to remember is that many people who are searching in your space, whether you sell socks or bike repairs or mortgages, the people searching won't necessarily be experts in your area. They won't know the terminology. They won't know what's possible. They won't know what the options are. They might not know which ones are better or worse. And Google will now start helping them to learn about that expanded universe of your search area. But that might mean that you're not competing on the right queries, or competitors who have content that is more geared towards helping users rather than selling to them might win out. Again, this is the same thing. We have to change how we think about content and marketing. And instead of trying to convince people to buy from us, we have to help solve their problems and answer their questions, really high up in that research journey, and then hope that we build enough brand preference and recall that later they come back to us. This is huge.
Well, it's also what we do. So yes, if you're here listening to this webinar, consider yourselves in our marketing funnel.
Yeah, and this isn't us selling directly to you. This is us influencing you and building brand recall and preference in ways that might turn up in a TikTok video on Google search, for sure. Whatever TikTok is.
So another new set of SERP features. I haven't actually seen broaden the search live myself yet, but it is very nice to see them go both ways on these. So if you're going too aggressive, that they might actually tell you, hey, let's broaden this a bit more.
Yeah, and again, this means we really need to stop thinking about how do I rank this page for this keyword and think about how do I craft content that solves my users' problems around keyword topics and ideas. And yes, you should still have focus keywords and do keyword research, but we're trying to understand how we craft content that solves user problems, not how to make this perfect page the perfect page for this perfect keyword.
Yeah, it doesn't exist anyway, so that's good. This title had me going absolutely like,
it's very Google, isn't it?
Yeah, how AI is making information more useful is how The funny thing is that I have this discussion with Marika a lot, because in marketing, data-driven is not like a bad thing. Whereas in research and at universities, data-driven is really like cursing, because what you should be is hypothesis-driven, or like, and I have the same problem with AI. You can't let the AI do everything for you. You actually need to figure out what you want to do and then use the AI in a proper way. But yeah, they are doing nice things with it, so I'll grant them that. And then I just want to get rid of dirty words like that.
Yep. Yep.
This was fun. New ways of shopping, and I probably should go to the next slide immediately, because then you can see what we mean with new ways of shopping. This is
so this is big. We've had similar things with Pinterest for a while, but this is becoming more and more integrated with Google Lens and Google Search. This is all becoming one process. I want to search for this thing in this image. If you're a Pinterest or an Instagram user, you've probably had things like Chrome extensions that allow you to do flavors of this. This is now becoming native in Chrome. I can click into an image, interact with it, and say, find me this thing, without having to have add-ons, without having to have apps and third parties to things. That being native is quite powerful. And it's going to change how people search. They're going to search much more visually. Therefore, make sure you've got an image strategy in place. Make sure that you're doing good photography, etc., all the same stuff.
Yeah, I love it. As getting ready to decorate a new home, it is it's really a good way of searching around for stuff. And we can also then, if we found our thing, shop it right from search. And at that point, we've basically come full circle, because then what do we need shops for anyway?
Well, yeah, you're not wrong. I think the interesting thing here is, a lot of what we've just said is you have to compete on brand building and influencing and steering people very gently at the top of the funnel. This is the other end. This is somebody who is at the point where they're ready to purchase, who is price centric, who is considering how long does delivery take, who is wondering, maybe I can go and collect it in person. All of that information is now readily available, and you can compete on price. You can compete on opening hours. You can compete on review stars and quality and quantity. It's going to be very, very difficult and hyper competitive. And maybe you need to compete at the top of the funnel as well. But yeah, so much of that point of purchase is now going to happen directly in Google and in the search results, without needing to go to a website, without needing to visit a store. You can't rely on getting people to your site to convince them. You have to convince them in search, and then you have to convert them in search.
Yeah. So, and there's more. They are expanding the About This results section in Google search results, showing you more details of well, what is this result, who is this site, what do we know about it, and etc. This is actually fairly useful for like proper research. I kind of like it.
Yeah, I think it's not going to change your SEO strategy, and you're not going to come up with any clever tactics, but it's really interesting to spot, okay, this site was surfaced because it was referenced by these kinds of brands, and here is the background, the people who publish it, and we think it's trustworthy because of these conditions. It's really good as a research tool for sure, and I think there'll be some interesting products built on the back of this in the coming years.
Yeah, it's very, it's very nice. I'm curious to see where they take this.
Yep.
And then we go on to Microsoft news, because it was one of those months in which Microsoft did something noteworthy.
Yep.
We do like our Microsoft friends. I will say that up front before we riff on their new standard. Because they have introduced yesterday, so this is fairly fresh, IndexNow, which is, as they call it, a way to instantly index your web content. And the problem is that we don't know which problem they're solving.
Yeah.
So they say that this should help in getting stuff indexed. And I'm like, yeah, but we are getting most stuff indexed. That is not a problem. And we are... I don't know how this actually improves anything. So this is Microsoft Bing and Yandex working together. The combined overall traffic to most sites of these two search engines is probably less than 1% of their traffic. that's why we haven't done anything with it in Yoast SEO just yet. We might later on, but for now, I don't see a reason.
Yeah, Melissa asks in the chat, isn't this what Google Search Console is for? Partly, yes. So I think that there might be a use case for this if you have a massive site with millions of pages being published all the time, or you have a really messed up site, which is hard to crawl and doesn't have proper XML sitemaps and is full of errors. But if you're running on WordPress and you're using Yoast SEO, or even if you have a half decent website, you've probably not got millions of pages and you've probably not got broken sitemaps. So the idea, like, search engines can easily find the content you publish, and then they've still got to visit it. They've still got to evaluate it. They've still got to index it. This doesn't change any of that. So yes, if you've got a huge broken site, maybe this allows you a kind of side door in to say, hey, we've got some new pages. But otherwise, this is a strange place to be focusing. And the whole SEO industry is very excited because, yes, we can pipe stuff straight into search, but why?
Well, and it's also, yes, Google Search Console does some of this stuff as well, but this is not Google. So Google doesn't, Google doesn't want this. Google is not supporting this, because if Google was supporting this, we'd have supporting Yoast SEO. They told about this up to us up front. We've been looking at it. I like the standard in many ways. I just don't see how it actually improves anything. And what people don't seem to realize is that when you publish a post, let's say you publish a post and you have it, you have 2 tags and 1 category on it, and it has an author, of course. At that point, you're not updating 1 URL, which is the new post URL, but you're updating the 2 tags and the 1 category's URL as well. You're updating the homepage. If you have a separate blog, then you're probably updating the blog page as well. You're updating the author's archive. So there's all these URLs that you're changing that we should be paying Bing for, as they state. And I'm like, no, that doesn't really help anyone. So if Google starts supporting this, we might look at it again. Or if Bing actually shows us that they will crawl more efficiently using this, and that it saves bandwidth overall, then we'll look at it again too. But right now, we made the decision to not support this based on, well, basically not enough data to prove that it's worthwhile. And it would add a ping for every change on your site to both Bing and Yandex, and that is, well, in the end, still quite a bit of data if you look at it at our scale, 12 million.
Yeah,
sites.
that's carbon costs and its trees, which is something we think about quite a bit. Because the scale we're operating at means that has a real impact on the world. So yeah, we spend a lot of time choosing what not to implement into Yoast SEO because of either SEO reasons or cost and processing overheads. This isn't in a position where it's a good idea for us to support this.
No, and we'll see where it goes. I hope that Bing actually shows us the value and that they can explain it to me. But right now they haven't yet. And then they said something else, which is probably very true. that we'll start searching earlier this year for our holiday stuff. Because I've already started.
Yeah, I've started as well, because they mentioned in particular, it's worth noting that there will almost certainly be stock and availability issues, especially in the UK and Europe, because of obvious political reasons that we won't go into. But it does raise the interesting question from an SEO perspective of when should I start optimizing my Christmas categories and pages? And the answer is last year. And the other answer is don't have a new page every year. The other answer is now. It's if you haven't, or if you have anything, any products or market or website or brand that has any seasonal content, you really want to be building equity in those pages over time, over the long term. You want one Christmas page which you keep forever, that gets stronger and stronger every year, that you always promote and build equity back to. So yeah, if you're not already working on this Christmas's content, then start now, because otherwise you might be too late.
And then we go to the WordPress news section.
Woo! And
we'll see about what is all nice and dandy. Oh, wait, we do have something nice and dandy. We have the new 2022 theme. If you're thinking it's only 2021, that's correct. That's because this is slated to be out at either the end of 2021 or early 2022. It kind of looks okay-ish. It's supposed to be the first full site editing theme. Which is why it also has like a gazillion different templates because you can create them all yourself in full site editing.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how that manifests. We've been talking about full site editing coming to WordPress soon for what feels like forever. And we're still not entirely sure, and I don't think anyone's entirely sure what that means. We know that we want WordPress to behave more like a site editor and the page editors like the Elementors and the Divis of the world. In practical terms, there's a huge amount of questions around that still. But 2022 will give us the first cut of, okay, here is how this feels to use. So it'll be really interesting to watch how that unfolds.
Yeah, looking forward to that. And then there's even more cool stuff.
Yes.
There's a web font API. Now, this web font API was based on a ticket created by one Jono Alderson, who I know was drawing it out because I was sitting next to him at the time. And then implemented by one Ari Statopoulos, who is in our WordPress core team. So we are getting quite close to having a full web font API in WordPress, which should make it easier to use web fonts, should make it easier to have web fonts across different themes, etc. And also actually should help a bit in optimizing their loading now that we have a Google library for it. So,
yeah, this is super nerdy, but it's such a big deal, not just for design and creativity, but for performance, for security, for a whole bunch of optimization reasons. This is the thin end of a wedge of doing all sorts of interesting performance stuff with WordPress.
Yeah, and talking about performance stuff.
Sleek, right?
This was almost as if we practiced it. We are getting ready to launch a WordPress performance team. And when I say we, it's not just Yoast. We are working together with the WordPress core team at Google, who have a team of, I think, 5 or 6 right now, people full-time on WordPress core. We're working together with them, and we hope all of you on making WordPress faster. We want a performance team because we think that just like we have an accessibility team, because it needs to be accessible, and we think that WordPress needs a performance team to continuously optimize its performance, because it's slightly, well, read that post. There's quite a bit of info in that. We're not getting faster. The competition in some ways is getting a bit faster. So we need to do better, and we can, and we are going to do that together. Yoast has a team of 5 people right now working full-time on WordPress core. So does Bluehost, our friends within our new Fold family. So we are going to be assigning a lot of resources to this, and so Google is also going to do that. So I hope that with that we can start all this, and we can, well, work together and get as many people to join us as we can.
Very exciting.
And then there was other tech news, or actually other SEO news in this case, right?
Oh yeah, this is really cool. So we've flagged, I think, 2 or 3 times Aira's periodical state of the industry reports. They're a really good benchmark that take survey results from all sorts of SEO professionals asking questions about their working habits, tools, technologies, their opinions on different techniques and tactics. But they've historically been quite focused on link building and outreach and digital PR. They've done one for technical SEO in conjunction with Women in Tech SEO, which is a really good group of, as you would guess, women in tech SEO. So it's nice. It's a different set of faces and a different set of voices giving opinions on a topic which isn't well represented. There's some really interesting discussion and findings in there around what is technical SEO, what are the kinds of things that it is and isn't, what's more important than other things, what's changing. It's quite a good introduction to technical SEO. It's also quite a good overview of where we think we are, where we think Google is. It's interesting reading. A lot of it is the kind of stuff that Yoast SEO takes care of automatically, which doesn't on other sites, which is good for us, obviously, and for you guys. But yeah, it's interesting to have a rummage through and see where we're at.
Absolutely. I always hope to read these reports and not find anything new, and I succeeded once again.
Yes.
It's always a bit scary when you read this stuff and you're like, oh, if someone is talking about stuff that I don't actually know about, then it becomes problematic. But no, it was good.
Yeah, we have not missed anything. That's the good news.
No. And then we lost Facebook for, well, a good couple of hours there. A while, basically 2 weeks ago now. and it was funny. It caused all sorts of discussions on Twitter, which was suddenly very busy. On, hey, you need to own your own domains, and I'm like, yeah, we've been saying that for years, but apparently people still don't know.
Yeah, I think it's difficult, isn't it? Because you do need to use these platforms to reach audiences, whether it's Facebook or Twitter or TikTok. You need to be in 10 different places doing lots of marketing. But it's really important that you also build your own castle, and you build your own defensive moat, and you build an email list, and you grow your own equity and content marketing, etc. So you've got to be doing everything out there, but also investing inwardsly. You've got to do it both, and you can't bet and build on rented territory for sure.
Yeah, that at the same time, you need to be on all these platforms, as you said. This is in many ways probably even scarier than a lot of other things. Because a shopping platform on TikTok would mean that some of my kids would be broke all the time.
That's the most significant issue, right? No, I think this is interesting, because the answer to that question of do I invest inwards into my own site or outwards into social media has typically been, okay, use social media for reach and to grow an audience, and then try and bring them back to your site to get their email address, to get them consuming content, to convert them. Nice and simple. Except it turns out if they can also just exist and shop and buy on the social platforms, what is your website for? And that's a really interesting question. It's one we see a lot with WeChat in China and in the East, where maybe conventional websites aren't that popular when you don't need them. So then the question is, what is my website for? And I guess the best answer is building a brand, having somewhere where your content and storytelling leads, having somewhere that people can remember who you are and sign up for things, which is what we've been saying. Again, so much of your content marketing strategy needs to be based on building brand preference and awareness on your site. And then the social platforms are reach and growth, but now increasingly also they might just buy your stuff there, or your competitors if you're not there.
Yeah, well, the latter is where it becomes problematic.
Yeah.
Okay, so then we had a bit of Yoast news because we keep on releasing cool new stuff. 17.3 was 2 weeks ago, and we added more practical workouts. I was going through those with Omar, our CTO, and the main developer on these workouts, and saying, hey, I want this to be easier. And then he made it easier for me, which is the kind of thing he does. So that was very nice of him. Well, yeah. You really, 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 really should be playing with workouts in Yoast SEO Premium, because they are a great way of optimizing your site very efficiently. So that's cool. We've also done some pretty cool stuff in our News SEO plugin, because, well, it's what we do. But the News SEO plugin has had an update today, which adds some nice new schema types and other things for you to play with. And there's more to know about that. There's also a workshop, a keyword research workshop that we did last week. Actually, Marika Thijs did with Fernando from Semrush. You can go and watch that if you want on that nice URL right there. And then all of this and much more and a lot of awesome other things are in Yoast Academy. And I really, really cannot understate the importance of that. Or I don't know. I might have broken my English there for a bit.
We got it.
But yeah, now Yoast SEO Academy is really, really filled with a lot of nice stuff. You can get in for free. And if you have Yoast SEO Premium, then you have Yoast Academy in full as well. So by all means, do make sure to get there. And then lastly, before we start taking your questions, we will be doing this again next month at November the 23rd. And then 3 weeks after that or so, we do it again in December. So make sure to put this on your calendar. Click that follow button that Taco mentioned earlier, and he will probably also give you a button to register for the next webinar somewhere in the next couple of minutes.
See, I don't have to do anything anymore. This is perfect. But yes, if you're watching us in full screen, you may need to unfull screen to see the shiny flashing button at the bottom that says register for our next SEO news webinar. So,
cool.
Yep, it's live now.
Well,
Hey, and
Yoast, shall I unshare my screen for a bit so that I can actually see us for a bit? That would be nice, right?
yes, that sounds like a plan.
Uh,
So there's one more thing that I maybe should put in the chat as well. But did you know that Jono is going to speak at a big event?
I know.
Oh yeah,
Isn't that
that's true.
Turing? Yeah.
Turing is one of my favorite conferences in the world. Very excited about that.
It is, yeah. So Jono is very excited about Turing. We are very excited when Jono is excited because he usually makes good presentations when he does. What I found really interesting was that they invite him to come and speak there, and then Jono, you should click on that URL that we just shared and look at the title for it.
What's the title? Just Jono Alderson. Just no brand stem at all. That page is me. What's really annoying is that page quite often outranks my website for my name, so it's doing a good job.
It is ridiculous. I was laughing at that. I was like, I would change that title slightly.
Yeah.
But it seems to work.
Yeah, it does. It works really well. There are virtual tickets for that. If you can't make it to Scotland in person in November, it's going to be cold and rainy anyway. But yeah, of all the conferences of the year, that's one to check out for sure.
Cool.
All right.
Well, we will.
So, and with that, quite a few people already found the Ask a Question section at the bottom of their screens. So let's go through a few of them. And this is actually a question by Jane Kumar, who asked, "Hi. I just watched one of your podcasts about keyword research, which was great, by the way, where Fernando Angulo mentioned the importance of questions as search queries. Does that mean that including a Q&A section on a page is a good strategy for SEO?"
Well, yeah, we have this thing in Yoast SEO called the FAQ block, which is, well, you can use for this particular tactic. Now, the only thing that I will say, don't add the same FAQ block on every page.
Yeah, and really think about whether it makes sense. Like the home page, probably not, unless it's really specific. But yeah, use it to answer questions for sure.
Yeah.
All right. And obviously use the FAQ block in Yoast SEO.
It is very fun to play with, and we're making it better soon, I hope. So we have good plans for that.
All right. Completely different question. Are header tags H1, H2, etc. important anymore?
Yes, they are important. If not for SEO, where I'm not necessarily convinced that which heading you use makes all that much of a difference. It is very important to actually use headings properly for good accessibility, so that you get an outline of an article that people can actually skim through quite quickly. And there's all sorts of tools that people use for that if they either need that for accessibility needs, or just because they are lazy like me and they want to go through articles faster. So yes, please use a proper heading structure in your articles. It really, really does make a difference.
And if you want to know how to do that, Jono just shared a link in the chat. So head over to yoast.com to read more about this.
Yeah.
All right. So I know that the both of you love this question. What is the number one most important factor I should focus on to get ranked?
So the number one important thing to do is to actually make sure that you are the result that people want to see when they search. That's not a factor, is it? But it is very much. I mean, it is. So what you want to do is you want to actually help them with their intended goal. And if you succeed at that, then you'll probably rank.
And they're on page one anyway.
People are saying EAT in the chat, and well, yeah, that's Google trying to represent that.
So what does that mean, except making people hungry?
It is close to 5 o'clock, so I can relate to this feeling. Yeah, no, I always forget when I'm put on the spot what it's worth, but authority, trustworthiness,
expertise.
Expertise. That's the first.
Good. That was slightly ironic to have forgotten that. But
the thing is that it's, for me, EAT is a way of looking like, is this page written with expertise? Does this site have authority? Is it trustworthy? That, in my opinion, just needs to be a given. Yes. And your site needs to ooze that. Like, literally everything on your site needs to show that you know what you're talking about, because that's what you do. And well, that's what you should be doing every day.
So, speaking of being an expert, I think I'd like to ask this question to Jono. Can you explain, well, with a visual example is going to be hard, but can you explain how structured data works with Yoast SEO Premium?
Ooh, yes.
Let's add that assumption, because that assumption is quite the assumption. I assume it is not as easy as adding the FAQ or how-to block.
That is as easy as it is. So two answers. One is it works the same as it does in Yoast SEO Free, which is we do a ton of heavy lifting in the background automatically. We calculate a bunch of stuff, we build a whole bunch of structured data, and we put it in the page. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to worry about it. It's magic. And then if you want to do FAQs or how-tos, yes, it is as simple as using those blocks, because then again, in the background, it just magically works it all out. That was why we built it that way. That was the whole idea. We don't want you to have to think about it. We don't want you to have to twiddle and configure dials and options and settings. If you create an FAQ block, you will have FAQ schema that will build on top of all the rest of the schema that we output. It will be perfect. It will just work. You don't have to even think about it. How cool is that?
Nothing to add.
We are quite proud of it, and that is because the both of us spent a lot of time building this.
Yep, that's 3 years of my life or so now. That's been it's been good. It's been interesting.
All right. So the next question for the about page: do we have to include keywords about the service we provide, or the name of the title of the website, especially in the SEO title, meta description, and keywords?
Yeah, I saw meta keywords and I was like, no. Well, you can skip the meta keywords bit if you want to save a bit of time. Nobody really bothers with that. But your about page should show who you are. That is the most important thing. I hate it when I see about pages that don't actually show me who you are, because I want to connect to the person and the company. Of course, when you talk about who you are, you should talk about what you do as well, because that is a logical thing to talk about when you're talking about who you are. So almost organically, and it should have those keywords in there. And then it's probably smart to mention them. So let's say you're a restaurateur, you own a restaurant and you have a nice about page. Then the title could very well also say, hey, we are this and this, and we are running this restaurant. We are Jono and Joost, and we are running an English restaurant, because all the food we create is crap, just like most English.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. It's not a good plan.
Yeah, so that.
Tell your story. Like, if trust is important, then your about page is where you garner that trust and show that you are genuine and real and have expertise. That also comes through in your product and your services pages. But this is a chance for you to also prove that you are a human and you have an education and you've won awards and you have opinions, those kinds of things.
People look at about pages surprisingly often, especially in around services.
So that actually makes me wonder, because I see a lot of one-person agencies, one-person shops write in approval form about their company. But then you're exposing yourself if you're writing on your about page and you're just saying that it's just you.
Well, the whole thing is, if it's just you, be honest about it.
Yep.
And there's really, it doesn't help if you don't do that. The thing is that in your reviews, if you're a service business, right, in your reviews, people will not mention your company name quite often. They will often say, hey, this and this person was very helpful. And if that person is the only person in your company, then that name will come up a lot. And that's fine if you are actually honest about what you are. So yeah, don't pretend to be something you're not. And also don't think that people always want a bigger business, because in some cases they might actually not want that.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. Also in the chat, Dana says the about is very important for non-profits.
Yeah, well,
And
I think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think about, and a good about page is important for almost every website.
All right. So to something slightly different. For making an e-commerce site or online shop, is it good to first create a blog site to drive some traffic, and then when the site's got some daily visitors, get some product in it and turn it into a shop?
That's really interesting, because those are two different types of audiences that want two different types of things. But yeah, build a brand and then start selling things. I imagine that's how many brands start. Somebody blogs about something passionately and then builds a thing, looking at you, Yoast. And then suddenly, yeah, you've got a product. I don't think that's unnatural. I don't think it's unhealthy. But I think trying to do that artificially is a bit weird. If you have a thing to sell, then launch with it and start selling it.
I mean, Yoast was a blog way before it was a company. Yoast.com, I created in 2006, and the company was founded in 2010, and the first employee was hired somewhere in 2012. So yeah, no, it is a very natural thing to do. But when you're thinking about it this much, it might also be not that natural.
Yep.
All right. So we'll skip an SEO question and go to a more personal one. Jason, I absolutely love your question. Yoast, this one's for you. What's the best James Bond ever?
God, this is hard. I haven't seen the latest one yet.
No, I haven't either.
This testament to busy times.
We're too busy doing SEO stuff.
Yeah, it's annoying. I don't know. It's actually a hard question to answer. The funny thing is, I was looking at some old ones not too long ago, and you realize that the old ones are slow. And
Yes.
And in many ways, that's not even a bad thing. It's just that they're, it dawns on you how much faster movies are these days. But Cedric is saying Casino Royale. That is a nice James Bond. So
what I really like is that in 3 chats we had 3 different James Bond movies.
Yeah.
So,
but no, it is. There's a lot of good James Bond movies, and at the same time, they're all crap. Because it's very much the patriarchy in its best form. But it is, I do look forward to seeing the newest one.
all right. So let's get back to SEO a bit, because in the end, it's what we're here for. Although we didn't see any people drop off when talking James Bond, so I like that. We've got the right audience here. So Search Pilot ran a survey asking SEOs to choose which of 2 pages ranked better for a specified query. The results were not good, showing that SEOs are basically no better than a coin flip at identifying why a specific page ranks better. What does this say about the SEO industry?
So I'm going to take this one because I worked at Distilled when we did this research, and this is a very convenient little soundbite. The reality is more complicated. So the thing to understand is that of a list of 10 results in Google, the distance between the results isn't the same. Like the gap between 1 and 2 might be 100 miles, and the gap between 7 and 8 might be trivial, or the other way around. So guessing which orders things should rank in isn't quite straightforward. And we shouldn't ever be able to say, oh, if I tweak this title or this H2 or this internal link, this will improve my rankings. That's not how the machine works. The machine is a big black box of a myriad factors. The only thing we know to be true is that Google is trying to help users solve their problems in a way that is good for users and is good for Google. And so generally doing things that aligns with that is going to close some of those gaps between you and your competitors. Will it change the order of any of them in a way you can predict? Almost certainly never. Like it is not the job of an SEO to guess which result will rank for which keyword in which order. It's to work out of all the compromises of cost and resource and time and politics and budgets and geography and economics. What should I do next to make my pages slightly better for my users, in what order? And do as much of that as you can in a way that feels sensible and feels intuitive, and don't worry about all of the, shall we guess what ranks where? Damn it, it's an oversimplification.
But Jono, if you state it like this, then SEO sounds like a lot of work.
Yes, it does, doesn't it? Rather than something we can just automate with a magical machine. Now, a lot of respect to Search Pilot and Distill. They do some great work with testing. I just think generally you don't need to test to know that you should make the thing that's not very good a bit better.
Yeah, it's the thing that annoys me most about SEOs in general is that they want to automate everything, and well, it just takes work. It takes in putting in the work to actually make your site better. That, and of course, when we let a lot of SEOs vote on something, they never agree. So that's why you should just listen to us.
Yep.
That's why so many people come back every month.
Yeah, I mean it's also sort of fun, right? But there's never going to be agreement on a whole lot of things in SEO because it's just too hard to prove either one of the sides.
All right. Since we're almost at the full hour, we'll do one last question. Yeah, time flies when you're having fun, Jono. So, how can you determine what keywords to use?
Well, it's relatively simple because the keywords are the things that your customers should be searching for when they want to find you. So in the gospel according to Yoast, Ashley, what you should be doing is figuring out how they describe your product and which words they use, and then use that to write about it. If you have no clue, go and look at the emails that they send you. Go and listen in on telephone conversations. Look at what types of words they use when they describe what you're doing, and then they use that in your copy.
And we've just dropped a link to our very helpful keyword research training in the Academy, which gives you the tools you use to find what all of those words might be and which ones to pick. It's also worth thinking about your competitors and the other kinds of websites and people who solve the same kinds of problems you do. You maybe don't want to be going directly against them if they're much bigger than you. You might want to find more niche terminology. But yeah, start with understanding what does my audience search for, what are the problems they have, and then start to align your content to that.
Yeah, and please use this one very, very good tool called Your Brain more than any other tool out there, because all of them are inherently flawed by the data sets that they get their data from.
Yeah, can't echo that enough, for sure.
All right. So with that, we've come to the end of the Q&A. I'll be dropping one more link in the chat because we recently started a Facebook community, the Yoast SEO community, where we focus on Yoast SEO Premium. So remember that link before, yoa.st/premium. That's where you go to make sure that you have Yoast SEO Premium, and then you can join our little Facebook group where we talk about much more SEO and try to answer all of your questions. So do find us there. Do find us next month on the 23rd of November with a new SEO news webinar. We'll bring you the latest and greatest in SEO. And of course, with our two superstars, again, Yoast and Jono. Thank you so much for joining us today, and see you again next month.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.